in the book, you mentioned how the community views a lot of things from the perspective of victims or
Yeah,
through the lens of victimhood.
yeah,
And I know you gave some examples like the holiday of Purim and
yeah.
a few others. Um, and I found that when speaking to a lot of friends who are Jewish, they do quite see it through that lens, and
Yes.
they primarily see it through what I'd say is also very fear-based.
Mm,
Um, so to give an example, um, a friend said recently, "Oh, how come I never see human rights organizations condemn, um, Hamas for the 7th?"
mm,
And he gave examples of like Amnesty International and human rights, but
mm,
a quick Google search showed that, pretty much a couple days after they did condemn it, and, a couple months after when they were actually able to gather a bit of data, they put out a report saying, those were human rights, sorry, they were like war crimes and crimes against humanity that Hamas committed.
mm.
But the part I'm having trouble getting through to people is pushing past that fear because it's
Mm.
very emotional and
Yes,
it's hard to kind of
yes,
rationalize it with facts.
yes, yes.
So I don't know if you've
Yes.
got any kind of tips or things because you mentioned a little bit in the book, but yeah, I found
Yeah,
normally, yeah,
yeah.
it's hard to get through to people.
Um, yeah, thank you. No, that is a kind of big theme of the book, and it's I think a lot of people on this call have had wrestled with exactly the question that you're wrestling with. I think that it seems to me that you have a situation where there is a genuine history that people are remembering, and 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 so that's part of it. The other part of it is that um, people, when you have a supremacist political system, the people in that supremacist political system are inclined generally to view the prospect of equality as incredibly threatening and dangerous. I don't think that's particular to Israeli Jews. I think it's true for white Americans, white Southerners, it's true for white South Africans. And then in addition to that, you also have this terrible vicious cycle in which the violence of this oppression produces counter-violence. And not even just violence, it produces rage, right? It produces violence and rage. And so one of the things that you notice if you follow kind of pro-Israel like media or social media, again, many of us may be on these shows, what you have is very, very little attention, if any, to what's actually happening to Palestinians in Gaza, and enormous amounts of attention to any expression of anger, rage, or certainly violence against Jews or Israelis, right? So I don't know where there's some festival or something in the UK that's just happened. Where's this Glastonbury? Is that the place? Never heard of this place, but let me just tell you, like, if you're a pro-Israel like person on social media, like this is the only thing you're hearing about today, right? And the fact that there were 49 Palestinians killed yesterday, like you're not hearing about that at all. And the problem is the two things are not connected in the discourse, right? So it's almost as if the assumption is these people in Glastonbury, wherever the heck that is, they woke up one morning and they decided to hate Israel and probably hate Jews because kind of like that's just the kind of way that Gentiles are, and they kind of just like they wake up on the wrong side of the bed and they do this kind of thing. And it's not usually said that explicitly, but that's the implicit kind of idea. And I was really I was in Belfast, um, and I haven't had a chance to kind of like do anything about this, but I found it super fascinating. And I spent part of the time in a Protestant neighborhood. Um, and one of the things that I saw that amazed me was there were these big memorials for people killed by the IRA, and they accused the IRA of intending genocide against Protestants. So evocative of the way in which people talk about, genocide against Jews. And I think that to me, the way it gets countered is if you actually do pay attention to what Israel is actually doing to Palestinians, because then your notion of victimhood has to be altered. And I think also then you see the anger at Israel, even if you don't agree with all of its expressions. I mean, I certainly would never endorse shooting people or attacking people in Boulder, Colorado, or this kind of thing. But it gives you a context, a story in which to understand it, which is different than this story of eternal anti-Semitism. And the thing that depresses me to this day is the ability of people to just block out all of this stuff. I mean, even though it's so accessible, via social media, right? It's almost like it kind of doesn't really exist for a lot of people. It's just clearly not, it's not penetrating them on an emotional level. Even if in the abstract they would concede that Palestinians are suffering in Gaza. But it's very different to concede that they're suffering while kind of thinking that they kind of basically brought it on themselves, or Hamas is responsible, from actually seeing and responding at a human level. And it's so difficult to get people to do that, unfortunately.